I think that the investments will be made, and that there'll be at least one more generation of nuclear power plants built. If for no other reason, that the Chinese are already building them very rapidly. They may not be built on any significant scale in Europe and North America, although I would not be surprised to see that happen, but they are going to be built in China.
Okay, interesting. One final question that I wanted to ask you about, which is another controversial technology, which is a lot of people are putting faith in carbon capture and storage as a way of being able to continue to use coal in a more planet-friendly way. Is this pie in the sky, or is this realistic, or is it just too early to say at this point?
Well, the cautious historian in me says the third. It's too early to tell whether carbon sequestration is going to work. Right now, it seems to be far too expensive, but as with many technologies, a great deal is dependent on scale, and there may be tremendous economies of scale available in carbon sequestration, but that has not been proven yet. It's only been done on a very small scale, and the evidence from that is that it's really expensive. And there are also anxieties about safety in carbon sequestration, because essentially carbon dioxide has to be put under pressure. I am no expert in the technologies involved, but I would say that I would be surprised if carbon sequestration proved a big part of the solution within 20 or 30 years. 50 or 60 years is so far out that I'm tempted to say almost anything could happen. But in the 20 to 30 year time horizon, I would be surprised. In fact, I would say it's more likely that we will try the radical geoengineering solutions that my colleague Paul Crutzen is interested in. That is, seeding the atmosphere with particles that will reduce sunshine, reduce solar radiation, reduce energy input from the sun in order to combat climate change. I don't look forward to that either, because I feel anytime you intervene in a large way in a biogeophysical process, you do more than you intend to do. And you cannot know for sure all the things that you're going to do. Unintended consequences happen.
Is there anything from the historical record about, maybe of course nothing on a geoengineering scale, but big unintended consequences of forays into the environment or natural resource exploitation?
There are hundreds, indeed thousands, of examples. Let me pick out just one, which is a famous one for environmental historians, but not widely known outside of Australia, and that is the intentional introduction of rabbits into Australia, which was done in the early 19th century in order to improve the food supply, which was a problem for the early British and Irish settlers in Australia. So someone had the bright idea of bringing in rabbits, raising rabbits in order to eat them. And rabbits quickly escaped the little cages that were intended for them, and very quickly there were millions and soon tens of millions of rabbits in Australia, because it turned out that there were very few predators that would eat rabbits and very few diseases that controlled the rabbit population, and there was lots of grass. So this turned out to backfire on Australia. In particular, all the pasture, the grasslands that were useful for sheep and cattle were nibbled by the rabbits down to their roots, and it caused periodic crises in the Australian economy. And great efforts have been made to destroy the rabbit population. Has never been successful. This is an example of a completely unintended consequence which has turned out to be ecologically and economically very unwelcome in Australia. But whoever did it, and we don't know for sure who brought the first rabbits into Australia, whoever did it thought it was going to be a helpful idea.
Changing the subject just a little bit, and turning a little towards, or touching at least upon your other big 21st century challenge of population growth, urbanization. You've done some research on infectious diseases and historical cases of infectious diseases and combating them. What can that tell us about some of these scares we've had with avian influenza, most recently swine flu, and what problems those might hold in store?
Again, there are tremendous uncertainties there. For the last 80 years or so, since the great influenza outbreak of 1918, we, the human race, have been comparatively fortunate. And I say this even though the modern HIV/AIDS epidemic now kills at least 2, probably 3 million people a year. But the sort of instantaneous, large-scale mortality that before 1918 was not all that unusual for the human race, we have not experienced. And the main reasons for that are human health interventions, successful medical research and technology, vaccinations, and that has worked very dramatically, which is a big part of the reason why there are more than 6 billion people now alive. Whether that can be maintained indefinitely is an open question. There is an ongoing arms race between the evolution of pathogens, viruses and bacteria that cause disease, and medical research and medical interventions. And it's particularly rapid in the case of influenza because the influenza virus mutates so quickly. Every year there are new influenza viruses, which is not all that common in the world of microbes. They do evolve quickly compared to larger species with slower generations. But the influenza virus is still unusual for this capacity. But so far, the human race has been pretty fortunate and pretty successful in containing epidemics and pandemics. And I would cautiously predict that that will continue. It's harder to do as global population increases, but probably global population will stop increasing in about 45 or 50 or 55 years. At least that is the best guess of the demographers. And we will have 9 or 9.5 billion people on Earth for a while, and perhaps global population will slowly decline after that. We shall see. But even without catastrophic mortality, which used to limit human population quite severely, we will, of our own accord, limit population growth in half a century, mainly through lower fertility, mainly because of urbanization. People who live in cities want to have fewer babies. And so the more urban we become as a species, the lower our fertility.
Well, we'll still continue to be in the Anthropocene from here on out, you think? Or is there going to be a post-Anthropocene at some point?
I would say we will continue to be in the Anthropocene for the foreseeable future, as long as we remain a highly ingenious and innovative and technologically competent species. And it's almost unimaginable that we would not be that and still remain human. So I would say the Anthropocene is here to stay for a very long time.